At the edge of a calm pond, a man and a woman in hiking gear point into a pool of water. Title card reads, Boreal Toad Survey. In voiceover, Park Ranger Shelby Surdick, a biological science technician, speaks to us.
When people think of wildlife in Alaska or picture an Alaskan ecosystem, probably the first thing that comes to mind is not a boreal toad. But they're actually very important species.
A plump gray and black toad sits in the grass, with a smaller green toad clinging to its back. It hops away.
First, because they are a source of prey for a lot of other species.
Wearing black gloves, Eric Louderback, a survey volunteer, holds a tiny toad in his hands. Next, he examines a tadpole floating in a clear plastic bag. As he speaks, other images show Eric examining a live toad in a plastic bag.
They're really a species that hasn't got a whole lot of time and study given to them. And so nobody even really knows what their habits are aside from the ponds they come to breed in. They don't really know where they go for the rest of the summer or for the winters.
Shelby uses calipers to measure the size of a specimen in a baggie. Wearing rubber boots and carrying a specimen bag, she and Eric search through grasses on the edge of the pond.
Boreal toads live very mysterious lives. They are most easily spotted this part of their range in the spring when they congregate at their breeding ponds. But outside of the spring and summer, it's not really well known where boreal toads go.
Since they're not that exotic seeming of a creature, they haven't been studied in great depth like bears have.
Additionally, boreal toads transfer nutrients from the aquatic to the terrestrial environment, so they're considered an ecological conveyor belt. So they do serve some important roles. Western toads have rapidly declined in large parts of their range over the last 30 years.
The scientists continue taking measurements in the field. A toad is held in a gloved hand. Its throat expands and contracts repeatedly, as if swallowing.
So one of the questions that our monitoring program hopes to answer is whether or not boreal toad populations here are declining or if they've stabilized.
Title card. How do we monitor amphibians? A hand turns dials on a field recorder held in a leather pouch. It's similar in size to a tape recorder. Eric and Shelby walk along the rocky bank of a stream, scattered with driftwood. They seek out and examine toads, taking measurements, handling the toads with gloved hands, and putting toads into plastic baggies.
I went out on 2 different monitoring trips, and the first one we went over to the Dai area.
So we walk to the pond and then we start filling out a data sheet. And that data sheet records all sorts of habitat and weather variables, and it also records data on any amphibians that we encounter in the field.
We were actually really lucky to find a good number. I think we found 10 or 12 adult toads as we walked along. And pretty much the way finding them works is as you carefully sweep your foot, they hop so they don't get stepped on, and use that Ziploc bag and the gloves to pick them up and put them in there so they don't hop away while you're doing similar measurements to their arm length, how wide their mouth is.
We record every adult, juvenile, tadpole, or egg mass that we see.
And we got to hike off trail a little bit to a little stream.
A mass of tiny black tadpoles, hundreds of them, wiggle in shallow pools of water.
And when we found that, it was just teeming with tadpoles.
When we see tadpoles, we have to estimate the number of tadpoles present, and the area that we cover is usually quite large. A single survey can take up to 2 hours of carefully walking along the perimeter.
Something that I was really interested to find out that I hadn't known was you got to change your gloves and bag out for every individual toad.
Kneeling in grass near Eric, Shelby removes her black plastic gloves. In the field, Shelby and Eric examine a single wiggling tadpole in a baggie.
because there's a disease that can be passed through their skins, a fungus, and you definitely don't want to hurt the animals you're studying.
All amphibians use both the aquatic and the terrestrial environment. And additionally, they have porous skin, which makes them very sensitive to a lot of environmental variables.
Shelby holds a tiny antenna in the palm of her hand. At one end is a small loop about the size of a nickel. Next, she adjusts knobs on the field recorder. Later, using a plastic baggie, she scoops a tadpole from the stream. Then, she measures the stream's temperature with a thermometer.
They can, in a sense, be thought of as a canary in a coal mine. But to try and find out where they're going outside of the breeding season, one aspect of this program is to actually put tiny radio transmitters onto boreal toads with a little belt and release them midsummer after the breeding, after egg masses are no longer being laid, and then to track their movement into the fall and hopefully locate their hibernaculum so that those can be protected and not disturbed. Because they're so highly sensitive, any declines that we detect in boreal toad populations can signal to us greater environmental problems that might exist, problems that might not have been able to have been detected in other means or as quickly.
Final image, National Park Service Arrowhead logo.